On today's show, science making music, more troubles for IC and Poot, and Ooze learns about the freezing point.
Hi, thanks for joining us on Hot Science.
Hi and welcome to the show. Now, what do you think a chimney and this container filled with puffed rice have got in common?
They might have the same sort of shape.
Yes, that could be the only thing in common, except that this is a really good model to see how a chimney works. And Robin, if you just bob down over there and look at this container. Now, what I want you to do is watch the level of the rice, puffed rice there. Okay, you ready?
Know?
Well, I'm going to blow over the top like this. I played a bit of a trick on you. Did you see what happened, though?
Oh, yeah, I got rice in my face.
OK, we'll do it again this time. And what I'd like you to do is just watch... Oops, I'll just take some of those off. Just watch what happens across the top.
Can I move out of the way
Yes,
this
OK.
time?
All right, are you ready?
Yep.
Here we go. Oh, do it again.
Now, you weren't blowing into that,
No,
were you?
I'm glad you noticed that. I wasn't actually blowing in. I was trying very, very hard to blow right across the top. And I was creating low pressure because fast-moving air is at lower pressure than the rest of the air around.
So why did it come up and out?
Because the pressure inside the container is the same as it always has been, but the puffed rice gets drawn up into that lower pressure area and it moves with that low pressure air out of the container.
Ah, now do we see this happen anywhere else?
We sure do. When two ships are passing one another, it's really important that they don't do it too close and too fast, because as they go past one another, there's fast-moving air in between and lower pressure, and they can actually get drawn to one another and collide.
Oh, whoops.
And we also see it when two trains go past one another. If they were really close and they went past one another, again, you'd have that low pressure and they'd be drawn to one another again. So, in fact, train tracks are a certain distance apart from one another to make sure that that doesn't happen. But an example you've probably felt is when you're in a small car and you're driving past a semi-trailer, and as the two vehicles go past one another...
It shakes.
That's right, because of the low pressure there.
Right, now what's all this about again?
Well, it's about fast-moving air creating low pressure.
Flotation.
Oh, if there's one thing I'm good at, that's floating around. I mean, living in water, you'd have to be, wouldn't you? Yeah, just floating around here.
Hi, Ooze, how are you?
Oh, hi, Sue, how you going?
What are you doing?
Oh, just floating around.
Oh, I bet you do that without even having to think. Have you ever thought about what it takes to make something float or sink?
Not really.
Well, we can have a look with this plastic cup and this bowl of water. Because something floats, Ooze, if the force pushing down equals the force pushing up.
Ah.
Now, the force pushing down is the weight of the object.
Right.
Let's have a look at what the force pushing up is. Just have a look. As I push this cup into the water, can you see that it's actually pushing some water out of the way?
Oh, yeah, look
Okay,
at
and
that.
the level of water in the bowl rises up.
Right.
Okay, it's that force, oops, that equal, oh, I push down,
Yeah.
okay, push some water out of the way.
Right.
Now there's an equal and opposite force pushing back, and I can feel it on my fingers pushing the cup up.
Ah.
Now, if the weight of the object equals that force upwards, then the object is going to float. And what causes the force that you feel upwards is the water that's pushed out of the way. So scientists say that something floats if its weight is less than the weight of water that's pushed out of the way.
Right.
And we can do an experiment.
Oh,
We can
great.
make a boat out of this.
Oh, yeah, right, Sue.
A nice big piece of modelling clay. Let's see first of all whether it floats. Put it in this aquarium where we can test our boat out.
Okay.
Oops, it's not very good at the moment. Now
Not really.
this modelling clay actually weighs something,
It does, yeah.
and it's only pushing a little bit of water out of the way, the water that would take up that shape. We can increase the amount of water pushed out of the way. That means increasing the force pushing back up by changing its shape. Oh, I'll just move this one out of the way.
Right.
And we'll turn this more into a boat shape. Now, what do you think about that, Ooze? Is it starting to look a bit more like a boat?
Yeah, it is.
So it weighs the same, but because of its shape, it's going to push more water out of the way. Now, I think that might be just about right. Should we give it a test?
Yeah, sure,
Might
let's
just
do it.
curl the sides up a little bit.
Okay.
Check there are no holes.
Right.
And there's our boat. Okay,
Right.
Ooze, here we go. Ready for a launch. Dun, dun, dun.
And, oh!
Oh, it floats.
Right.
Now, do you think we could load it up?
Yeah,
I've
sure,
got
let's
some
make it
marbles
sing.
here. One, two, three,
Yeah.
4,
Keep going.
5. Uh-oh, here it goes. 6,
Keep going.
7.
Oh, no. Oh, there it goes.
That was the marble that sunk the boat. Now, the weight of the boat hadn't changed. We'd used the same amount of modelling clay, but by changing its shape, I'd been able to push more water out of the way so that there was more thrust upwards and the boat was able to float.
That's great. So, hey, I think I'm just going to lie back here, float around and think about it.
The adventures of IC and Poot. IC is hurrying home after baseball practice. He's running late for a date. He also has to finish his homework. Poot decides to run out and welcome his master home. Icy only sees him at the last moment. Icy suddenly realises he's successfully completed his homework assignment. To come up with an idea that demonstrates a chain reaction. Can you think of some others?
Now, a chain reaction is a series of events in which each event influences or causes the next. But how would you make a chain reaction machine? Well, I have a team of investigators working on that right now. The girls first, Kate and Rachel. Hi, girls.
Hi.
Now, what's your machine going to do?
Well, we've got marbles on a piece of wood and one comes off the end to set off a mousetrap.
Ah, and what materials are you going to use?
Some wood pieces, some marbles, block pieces and a mousetrap with a mouse on it.
Not a real mouse, I hope.
No.
No? Okay. Now over to the boys. We have Lee and Luke. Hello, boys.
Hi, Robin.
Now, what are you going to do?
Well, we're going to have some steel balls which are going to turn a light on.
A light on at the end?
Yes.
And what materials are you going to use?
Wood, glass tubing and a plastic ramp.
And what about that truck there?
That's going to go down the ramp and turn the light on.
Ooh, excellent. Well, that's two really good ideas. Can you think of another one? Well, if you need a bit of help, have a look at Sue. She's creating her own chain reaction.
Hey, come and have a look up close here because I've set up my own chain reaction using these plastic domino tiles. I've got 6 more to put in place, so I'll just put those in here now and we'll be ready to go.
Hi, Sue.
Oh, hello. Oh, stand back. Don't
Hi.
come too close because I've set up a chain reaction here and all we need is a little puff of wind and it'll send it all going.
All right.
Okay, I've just got 6 to put, 2 now to put in place and we're ready to go. I'll just sort these out. Now, Rob, it's really important if you're going to set up something like this that you have them just the right space apart. There we go. That's the last one in place. We're ready to go.
Now, what's going to happen? I put a marble in up here.
Yep.
And then it goes down.
Goes around, down, 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 all this track, and then it will pop out here at the bottom, and it'll knock the first domino, and that'll knock the second, and on and on and on, and they'll all knock one another. And then we get to this part, and you can see these dominoes are actually stuck on some propellers. And as this one gets knocked, it spins around, and this one will knock the domino here, and we'll go knock, 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 knock. And we'll get to these dominoes, and they'll get toppled over as well, and that one is going to bump this cart. Can you see there's a cart on a ramp?
Yeah.
And it'll make the cart go down the ramp, which will knock the next domino, and it'll send them going all the way around in that arch.
Ooh.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
Can we give it a go?
Sure. Now, why this is a chain reaction is that once one thing or one event happens, it's going to affect or have implications on the next, on and on and on. So, are you ready to go?
Sure am. Give me a countdown.
Right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yes! Isn't that fantastic?
It worked. That was great.
It was.
Now, if that was too fast for you to see, why don't we have a look at a slow motion replay from the side?
Oh, look, there
There
they
it
go.
Poof, and there they go around, spinning.
Get to that
And
cart.
here comes the cart.
Yes!
And they go around in this circle. Wow!
Isn't that fantastic?
Let's have a look at that one more time from on top.
Oh, there it goes. Hit the cart. Down, down, down. Around Hot Science. Bang!
Excellent. Why don't you try setting up your own chain reaction like ours with some plastic dominoes?
Next, science, skates and thin ice.
Freezing point.
Ah, oh, it's cold! Someone forgot to turn the air conditioner off!
Hello, Ooze, how are you doing?
Sue, it's freezing!
You look very blue and cold.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably got something to do with all of these ice cubes in your bowl.
Must have.
You're exploring freezing point, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got some ice skates here, and did you know that ice skaters use freezing point and their weight on the skate to affect the way they can skate along on the ice?
Yeah.
They do, because the pressure of their weight,
Right.
all being supported just on these thin blades, is enough to affect the freezing point of water. That's the time, or the point, the temperature, when ice turns from, or water turns from ice back to a liquid.
Right.
Okay, and you can affect the freezing point by pressure. So if you've got a skater standing on these skates, all of their weight's just being supported on this small area of blade, which means lots of weight on a small area, lots of pressure, and it's enough just to melt the ice underneath here, turn it into water so they can skate along.
Right.
Now this is a pair of skates for somebody who plays ice hockey. So they skate along, and when they want to stop, they can turn their skate sideways and cut into the ice and create lots of friction, which slows them down.
Right.
But we've got some other skates here. This is a skate from a figure skater.
Yeah.
And you can see that they're a nice shaped skate. They're a little bit, the blade's a little bit wider, so they've got a bit more control. And at this end, can you see that they've got that ice pick?
Oh,
There,
yeah.
which is good for when they want to do sudden changes in direction, they can grip, and also when they want to do a jump, they can grip and take off.
Ah.
And we've got one other sort of blade here. Look at this one, Ooze.
Oh, wow.
Wow, it's a big blade.
Yeah.
And this is the skate from somebody who's a speed skater. So they move very quickly. And by having a really long blade like this, Ooze, they keep their blade on the ground all the time as they're moving. They've always got something to push against. And they've also got a very sharp blade, much thinner than the others that we've had a look at. And that means that there's even more weight on a smaller area, which means even more pressure, so that they're going to melt the ice even better and skate along.
Right.
Robin's got an experiment we're going to see in a moment, which is all about changing the freezing point of water with pressure. But Ooze, before I leave you, I'll just rug you up so you'll be nice and warm. Is that okay?
Yeah, thanks, Sue, thanks.
Have you ever had a huge block of ice and you've wanted to cut it evenly right down the middle without any jagged edges and you can't? Well, Sue says it is possible, and all I'm going to need are these things. Now, she wants me to set up this experiment. A big book like this, a bottle filled to the top with water and wire placed on the top, a fork which has got a metal covering on the tip, and some tape. Now, she told me I have to put it together, but I'm not quite sure how. So, Sue,
Hi, Rob. Oh, good, you've set all of this up.
what do I do?
Well, we're going to put the fork over the edge of the table there like that. Oops.
Yep, and there's some tape.
And put some tape on there like that.
And what about the book?
Well, the book's to sit on the end of the fork so the fork doesn't tip over.
Right.
Right, like
Okay.
that. And what we're going to do is have a look at how pressure can cut an ice cube. So if you grab an ice cube
Okay.
and put it on the end of the fork there.
Right, that long ways?
Yeah, long ways is easier for me. So I've got a heavy weight on a thin piece of wire. All of that weight is being held up just by that thin piece of wire, which means lots of pressure under the wire. And that pressure is enough to lower the freezing point of the ice under the wire, just in that little area, and to actually cause it to melt. And so by using pressure like this, you can cut through an ice cube.
Now, how long will that take?
Well, it might take about, a minute or two to actually cut through. And if you're doing this in a cold place, you might actually find that it refreezes as it cuts through. But we have set one up just over here.
Ah.
And this has been sitting here for a few minutes, and you can see the weight's still on the end. I'll take that off. Oh,
Oops. The ice
good.
cube's coming in it. Ooh.
that's good. It's frozen in. Leave that. That's fine.
Oh,
like that.
okay.
So I might just shift that over there, and you can see that the ice has melted where the wire was sitting on top.
Oh, it's really embedded in there.
It has, hasn't it? And if you're doing this in a cold spot, you'll actually find that the ice can remelt, and you'll find the wires actually trapped inside the ice.
That's amazing.
Now, there's another experiment that we can do, changing the freezing point of water, and that is to make an ice cube necklace.
Oh, really?
There's a piece of cotton over there, if you'd like
Yeah.
to grab that.
Okay.
Just put this ice cube here on top. Now, if you just lay the piece of cotton on top of the ice cube,
Like that?
and just push it down a little bit flat, like that. And then to change the freezing point here, what we're going to use is ice.
Is
salt.
ice?
Salt.
Salt.
So if
okay,
you grab
I've
some
got some
salt
here.
and just sprinkle it over the top of the piece of cotton.
Like that?
Yep, like that. And we wait for a little while. What will happen is the salt will change the freezing point of the water underneath. It'll change from ice into water, and then it'll refreeze and freeze the string inside.
Now, do we use salt for any other application like
we sure
this?
do. In cold countries where ice forms on the road, it can be really dangerous. So to change the freezing point of the water, people actually put salt on the roads, and it causes the ice to melt, and then it just becomes slush, and it's a bit safer to drive on.
Oh, I've seen that. Now, Sue, I know where I'm going to wear that necklace.
Do you?
Yep,
Where?
I'm going to have a nice long one to keep my tummy cold.
Oh, great. But once you put this on, it's going to melt pretty quickly. Let's have a look anyway and
Is
see
it
how it's
ready?
going. Yeah.
I'll just lift it up. Oh, well, some of it's stuck. I think we need to leave it a little bit longer.
Yeah, well, why don't you try making your own ice cube necklace and giving it to someone special?
Next, the art and craft of flute making.
Now we're back with our team of investigators who've been working on making their very own chain reaction machine. Now remember, a chain reaction is a series of events in which each event influences or causes the next. Let's see how the girls went. We have Kate and Rachel. Now what happens here, girls?
Well, you push that marble and that pushes that one, and the energy passes through that marble to make that one come, and the same thing happens.
So only one marble each time?
Yeah.
Right.
And one marble comes off the end and sits off the mousetrap.
Aha! Does it work?
Yep.
Let's give it a go.
Okay.
Oh! No, the mousetrap didn't go down. Can we do it again? Get that out there without causing too much trouble. There we go. And this one here, is that all ready?
To move these up.
Yep. So how many reactions have we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, ready? Let's go. Oh, another fatality.
It should work.
Is the mousetrap stuck there? Just try one more time. Push these back. That one there.
Yeah,
That one there.
out now.
Okay. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, go. Yes! But it happened so quickly, I think we need to see it again in slow motion. Here we go, the marble's down, and there's the mousetrap. It's all finished. Well done, girls. Now let's see how the boys have gone. We have Lee and Luke over here. This looks very interesting. What are you going to do here?
The ball will roll down the glass tube,
Right, down here.
and once it's come out, it will knock that piece of wood over,
Right.
which will fall down and knock the next piece of wood over and send the ball swinging.
And then what happens?
This ball will swing over here and hit this piece of wood,
Yep.
and this ball up here, will, when the wood falls, this ball will swing across here, across to this piece of metal, hit it, which will spin round, and it'll send the car going right down the ramp,
Uh-huh.
and which will turn on, which will flicker off this switch, which will turn the light on.
Right, so you've got a simple circuit happening down there.
Yes.
Does it work?
I think so.
Let's try. Whoops. Give it a go. 1, 2. Ta-da! Look, that was so quick as well. I think we need to see it again in slow motion. Let's have a look. Oh, there it goes down. 1, 2, 3. Off to the truck and... Oh, the light was so quick. Let me show you what the light actually looks like. The truck comes down here and hits that little switch and the light goes on like that. Boys, that was fantastic. Now, how many reactions are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Aren't they fantastic? Maybe you could make your very own chain reaction machine, but rather than using 5 or 6 events, like our investigators did, why don't you try and go for 10? You try it out.
Fingernails and toenails begin to grow a few months before birth, and the longest thumbnail ever grown was a record 1 metre long.
So is the flute just one piece?
Sometimes 2, usually 3. So at the top we have the head joint where the whole sound starts. Then you have the body with the main keywork on for playing all the different notes. And finally the foot joint for extending that a little lower. But the whole process really starts just with a piece of plain tube, which is either silver, gold or platinum.
Well, they might look like pieces of pipe with holes in them, but a lot of work goes into making a flute, particularly a handmade one, made to order. The first step is to draw a tube out of a big glob of metal.
We've drawn the tubing by means of locking the crimp tube back over the drawing arbor, and then we've proceeded by way of this hydraulic press, is to be able to press that tube that's held by the arbor through what is known as a metal cake, a drawing plate. After we have prepared the tubing, cut the tubing and prepared and sanded and polished, the next procedure is to advance towards the preparation of the lip plate.
This is a very important part of the flute. It's the part you blow into, and like everything on a handmade flute, it has to be just the right size and shape. It's a big job, but then handmade flutes are usually made especially for an artist, and they can cost anywhere from $10,000 to $40,000.
What you see here is the finished product. We have added the stopper, we have added the crown that screws into the stopper, into the end of the head joint. The head joint has been totally polished, and of course it's been engraved. Now the head joint is a finished product.
Well, we've learned about the head, but what about the body and the foot?
Yeah, they're both made in the same way. There's 16 holes. The hole is turned out of a piece of tube on a lathe. That's then sat onto the other tubing and soldered on, as with this one. We then drill a small pilot hole in the centre and, by hand, scrape out the tone hole. It should be basically circular, but by elongating it each way, we can change the notes slightly, and we have to do it to very specific dimensions. We then measure for the position of the other holes, and we carry on till we've got the whole body full of holes. The next stage after that would be to apply what we call the rib, which holds on the mechanism so that all the key work can be fitted between it. This is made out of sheet and is just soldered onto the tubing. Once we've done that, we get onto the key work, which has cups that are stamped out of flat sheet, and they're going to go over the holes, and then key pieces that are cast by pouring molten silver into a mould, and then we hand finish those with a file and again solder them so that you end up with the key pieces, the finished ones, and those are the castings. Once that's done, the padding is done, which is for each key to cover a hole, it has to cover completely airtight. This is done by placing a pad into the hole, as with the finished ones, and then as we press each key down, so the pad seals the hole so that the air travels all the way down the flute to the end to give the low notes, and then if we're playing higher notes, it just travels to the last cup that's sealing airtight, and then it will give you the other note out of the hole.
Quiz time! Hey, Ooze, why is it important that two ships, as they pass one another, don't come too close?
Ah, because the low pressure between them could force them to collide.
That's right. Now, Sue, what's a chain reaction?
A chain reaction is a whole series of events where the first one affects the next one, which affects the next event, and so on.
Well, that's something for you to try at home. Make your own chain reaction. But, Ooze, I think we've got to warm you up.
Yeah.
Time for us to go. Bye-bye.
Bye.